he lingered in the background as dark, tense music set the mood for something unsettling. Night shifts were always boring for Carlos. Spending 8 hours alone, monitoring an old office building was the very definition of monotony. But that changed one night, a night he would never forget. It all started with a call he should have never answered. It was 11:57 p.m. Carlos sat in a security room surrounded by surveillance monitors. He watched the black and white images of empty hallways, closed offices, and the motionless elevator. Nothing seemed out of place. Another quiet night, or so it seemed. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sound of a call. The landline phone, an old dusty device that had never rung during any of his shifts, was now ringing insistently. Who the hell is calling at this hour? Carlos muttered to himself as he picked up the receiver. Central offices, who's calling? He asked, his tone dry and slightly annoyed. For a moment there was only silence, followed by the faint sound of labored breathing on the other end of the line. A long, uncomfortable pause followed, then a woman's voice, weak and frightened, broke through. "Please help me. I'm trapped on the 13th floor." Static and interference crackled faintly. Carlos frowned. 13th floor. This building doesn't have a 13th floor, ma'am. Who's calling? He asked, his voice now a mix of confusion and irritation. A loud click echoed in his ear as the call abruptly ended, followed by the brief buzz of static. Carlos lowered the receiver, his eyes drifting to the large floor plan of the building pinned on the wall. 12 floors, not one more. Logic told him it was a prank. But there was something about that woman's voice. Something about her breathing that wouldn't leave him alone. Carlos decided to check the building. He walked through the hallways, checking doors and staircases. Everything was normal. The only sound was the echo of his own footsteps and the faint creaks of wood underfoot. No one else was in the building but him. By 1:33 a.m., silence had returned, or so he thought. The phone rang again, this time louder and more persistent. Carlos gritted his teeth. "Not again," he muttered as he picked up the receiver. "What's going on now?" he demanded, frustration clear in his voice. This time, there was no breathing, no static, only silence. Then the voice returned. "Carlos, now I can see you." The woman's voice was clearer this time, closer, colder. A chill ran down Carlos's spine. Heavy static filled the line, crackling like a broken signal. He stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest. Slowly, he turned his head toward the security room door. It was closed, but he felt it. Something was watching him from the other side. 3 loud knocks echoed through the room. Talk, talk, talk. The sound reverberated and then silence, pure suffocating silence. The tense hum of the background music grew more intense, a low, ominous vibration that made every breath feel heavier. Carlos's breath was shallow, his eyes fixed on the door. "No, it can't be," he whispered to himself. But knocks didn't come again. With the feeling of being watched never left, he decided to go upstairs. His breathing was short and tense as he climbed the creaky metal staircase, flashlight in hand. Each step echoed in the narrow stairwell, the cold metal sending vibrations through the soles of his feet. He climbed past the 10th floor, then the 11th, then the 12th, but when he reached the next landing, he stopped. His heart pounded harder in his chest. In front of him was a metal door he had never seen before. A door with the number 13 painted in faded red. No, this can't be. His voice was barely a whisper. The door was old, its surface scratched and weathered. glistened in the dim light. The stench of mold and rot filled his nostrils, so pungent it made him gag. At the end of the hallway, something caught his eye. An old telephone booth, its receiver hung loosely, swaying from side to side. The same phone he had answered. Carlos's steps were slow, cautious, his flashlight trembling in his hand. Each step echoed softly in the narrow hall. He wanted to turn back, but something pulled him forward. His breathing was shallow, his eyes fixed on the swaying receiver. When he reached the booth, he stopped. The receiver was still swinging. Then, from the speaker, a voice echoed, "I'm not trapped anymore, Carlos. Now you are." His eyes widened. The sound of a loud, metallic slam echoed behind him. He spun around, flashlight flickering as he aimed it at the source of the sound. The door had shut. "No, no, no, open up. Let me out, please." He screamed, slamming his fists against the door. The sound of his pounding echoed through the hallway, every thud growing more frantic. Camera footage from the security room showed it all. Carlos never returned. Days passed. Then, a week later, a new security guard arrived. Footsteps echoed as the new guard entered the security room. He sat down at the desk, glancing at the screens. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. Suddenly